Welcome to the Nipple Chronicles, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the raw and real experiences of women today. I'm your host, Jessica, and I'm here to challenge the norms, stir the pot, and celebrate the individuality of women, while confronting unhealthy societal norms and, most importantly, honoring our authentic selves. So buckle up and get ready to laugh, learn, and maybe even unlearn some of the things you thought you knew about being a woman today. Welcome to episode 9 of the Nipple Chronicles. I am here today with the lovely and talented Melissa, who is a operations manager for a small financial firm. Welcome, Melissa.
Hey, thank you for having me on. Excited.
I'm so excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about breaking barriers, particularly stereotypes in traditional families.
Fun.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, my name's Melissa and California native. Was born and raised in Long Beach. Shout out Long Beach, my favorite place here. And I grew up with my parents, mom and dad, but I also have an older sister and 3 younger brothers. Just kind of learning life, man. Doing life. Like you said, I'm operations manager at a small investment firm / family office. I've been there for 7 years, have learned quite a lot about just the finance world and just doing life, I guess, essentially in this finance world full of men and full of just different adventures. So did that. Lived in Europe for a little bit. I love traveling, and I would say, I was blessed to be able to live out in Europe for about a total of like 2.5 years. So that's me, just living life.
I love that. Yes, and we will actually talk about her adventures in Europe later in the episode. I know you said in our pre-interview you went to Cal State Long Beach.
I did.
And it was during your 3rd year when you were studying abroad that you found your love affair with Europe, amongst other things.
I love it. Yes. Yeah. So grew up, like I said, I grew up in Long Beach. So didn't really, when I was in high school, everyone was kind of going away, but I just knew I wasn't ready to move away from home yet. I think I was very coddled. I grew up in the Mexican family, so it wasn't time for me to go. And I knew I was like, you know what, Cal State Long Beach here. I love it, love the school. But in my 3rd year as a junior, I was like, I get to go. I'm ready now. I need to bloom. So that's when I went and I studied abroad in Barcelona, and woo, that was the start of a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful adventure.
I love it. So I love that. I love that you were able to take that fun adventure in your life and explore Europe, especially growing up in a Hispanic family. I'd imagine you grew up with a lot of tradition. And again, where we're here today to discuss that breaking free from those traditional stereotypes. So I'm curious, can you share with the listeners what that was like and what you encountered growing up in that traditional family?
Yeah, I think, to start off, my dad was born in Mexico and moved out to the U.S. permanently when he turned 19. Whereas my mom, she was born and raised in Long Beach, actually, as well. So we didn't go far. So I had a blend of your traditional Mexican culture because of my dad growing up there. And then my mom sort of influencing where she could in the sense of it not being way too traditional. Yeah. So there was it was a beautiful blend, and it was I would say in the traditional ways family for sure, number one thing that was always seen in our family. It was okay, family, and then just seeing their marriage and the way that they chose to raise us as compared to maybe my friends, because I also grew up. I went to private Catholic school. Growing up, and there it was pretty diverse. I have friends that of all races, and so but I would say more on the American side. So it was being able to see, hey, my friends get to do this, and my parents on this Mexican side are a little bit stricter, and so it was sort of a good balance. I would say I really appreciate my mom for for making sure that we didn't grow up in a really strict household, what she experienced, and being able to have those conversations with my dad and be like, okay, let's like blend it in where you have like these beautiful values of the Mexican tradition, which is like your family, religion, but then also it's like, hey, our kids also still get to experience fun. Like we cannot just enclose them in this like, you can't do that or do this. And then also like when it comes to like women, like my femininity, I was really lucky. I think my dad just had so much love for us and just wants the best. So I think both of my parents just empowered my sister and I to just be the woman that we need to be. Like, you don't need to be stuck at home. Like, they didn't expect us to be wives, but if that's what we want, cool. But like, they really empowered us to like do our thing. Like, yeah, go to school, go follow your dreams. Follow your dreams, maybe in the sense of like make money while you're following your dreams. But yeah, that was just the household that I grew up in.
Yeah. So no, I love that. And I know during our pre-interview, you had shared that your mom was that bridge and that she did kind of stand for you to be able to embrace that modern woman, that American woman, and the values that came with that. So it's quite interesting. Like, you've been on this kind of dual journey in being able to experience what your friends were, free to do, and also have that foundation of the traditional values.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, I would say, in discovering who I am. But I think that this has been the most important journey. It's like really figuring out who I am as a woman. Like, where do I stand, and like, what are my values? And is it lining up with my authentic self and being okay with it? Like, falling so in love with myself that it doesn't matter if it goes against the norms of maybe what like my family sees for me or what other people see for me. It's just been this journey of like, when I stand in my truth, when I own my truth, I can create, and I think like that's just the gift that I get to be as myself. I think that's everyone's like true gift. Like, own who you are, and like that's the gift to the world. So yeah, it's been fun getting to know me and falling in love with me.
I love that. It's been fun getting to know you as well for me. But Melissa and I have only known each other about a year and a half now. But it's been a very fun journey, and I'm so grateful that you say journey in the first place, because obviously like we're all here just learning and getting to know like who we really are and like what we really want. And it's really about that clear definition of identity, but also understanding that like, I love that you said like your feminine grace and your femininity, because that is the state of like a flow and being able to move and not have that kind of rigid ideology of like, this is who I am, this is how I'll always be, I'm never going to be different. And obviously coming up against a lot of history and values that I'm sure your dad like has in his head and heart. And again, not good or bad, but just who he is. How do you think coming up against those values has really impacted your professional and personal life up until now?
I think growing up until like more recently, there was, from my perspective, this need to please my parents, to not go against what they believe is true, and but also being in grace with them as well, like knowing like that's just how they grew up, and that's their own truth, and I can take their truth and let it influence me, or wherever it lands for me, it's like, okay, cool, that this is where it lands. But yeah, it's been, again, another journey in that sense of like, okay, I'm taking what you're saying, but that aligns or that doesn't align with who I am personally. And if it aligns with me, like, great. And if it doesn't, well, then that's where I just get to stand in my truth, and I'll show you, like, this is my truth. And maybe in you seeing who I am as a person and that you're happy, they will be. I know. That's been the thing. It's like they will accept me for who I am. So, it was a battle to like, oh my God, I feel like I'm betraying my parents by owning my truth. But then I think what would be worse would be betraying myself and not owning who I am as a person, because I'm so worried about what traditions in my like the familial traditions that my parents believe in. So, but it's been hard. But at the end of the day, it's like so it's just so like there's this beautiful satisfaction in knowing that I'm just owning who I am. And again, at the end of the day, my parents are always, they love me.
Yeah.
They love me for
They
who
do.
I am, for
They
who
do.
I am. And so it's like, yeah, just get that courage. And that's a huge word that I'm like embracing this year is like courage. It's like just have the courage to be what you think and stop worrying about it. And then you'll all see it comes together, because at the end of the day, I'm me and they're going to love me for me.
So that's really beautiful that you have come to that realization and how it did impact your personal life. I know during the pre-interview you had mentioned, jumping into your marriage. So we'll share with the listeners. She is a sexy,
divorcee.
Beautiful divorcee. But I mean, share a little bit about that adventure, we'll call it, and what you've experienced, even again coming up against those traditional norms on this quest of personal identity with yourself and with your family.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, when I moved away to Barcelona, I was studying abroad, right? And so, in that sense, like, cool. I think in that I was very fortunate that my parents were so about that, so encouraging. But also on my adventure over there, I met a man and fell in love. And that's a whole other story, and that was so much fun. But I think also another thing, I'm a hopeless romantic. So this was not a surprise to my family that I ended up like falling in love and just like being like so in love with some French guy. Shout out to the French. No, I'm just kidding. No, so it wasn't a surprise to them, but I was 20 when I met the guy. We were engaged by the time that I was 21 and married by the time that I was 22. So I was like really young. But I would say maybe some of the harder things about my parents accepting that marriage was that once we got engaged, or once I told my ex-husband, like, hey, we're not getting married until I finish college. So I came back, finished college, then I moved out to Europe. So like that was like number one thing, was like, whoa, the woman isn't the one that goes to, move with the man. The man should come here. Now, granted, like my parents actually are pretty okay. Like, yes, I knew there was concerns, but I think I will always like respect them in that sense for them giving me like that freedom to be like, yo. But I heard it from like tías, like, hey, pues por qué no, like, why, por qué no se viene? Like, why isn't he coming out here? So there was that of like. But I'm so headstrong when it comes to love, so it's kind of like, I'm going to do this for love. And
like my heart. Like, I love that. Like, that's so authentic and so raw. And like, it's not something that women really, I feel like in my experience in the modern world, they don't give themselves permission. Because I'm a sucker for love. Like, my sister probably mocks me to this day that I love love.
Mm-hmm.
So
me too, girl. I mean, hello, I got married and I moved to Europe for love. So yeah. And so there was that. But you know what? I think that there's something that I just realized right now. When you are committed to something, you can bring people onto that, like, truth with you. And so it was, yes, it could have been, like, it was very difficult for my family to see me leave. One, because I was also the one out of, like, the 5 girls, or not 5 girls, 5 children. I was one that was going to stay home. Like, I know everyone could tell me, like, you're never going to leave. And I'd be like, yeah, I know. I just love being home. I love my family. And so, yeah, I left. And unfortunately, the marriage didn't work. Within by 23, I was divorced. Or, no, sorry, separated by 23, finalized my divorce by 24. And at 24, when I came back home, or I came back home when I was, like, 23. But when I came back home, automatically I was like, fuck. Oh, excuse me.
it's okay.
Okay.
We talk about fucking on here, so it's okay if you say fuck.
I was like, what are people gonna think? And I'm getting divorced. 1, I've been married less than a year. 2, like, what are my parents gonna say? What are people gonna say? And then I also felt like such a failure. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't make a marriage work. And so growing up, it's like marriage is so, or what I thought was so important, and it's something that you stick to forever, and it's, and so I came back thinking that I was going to be like, with like, oh my God, why didn't you try? Like, this is marriage. Like, you made this promise. We didn't get married through the church. It was all done civilly. But it was still just kind of like, I'd been taught like marriage is forever. So yeah, one, I felt like a failure. Two, it was just kind of like, well, what are people going to say? And it was really interesting because I guess the most feedback that I got, or what people were telling me, is like, oh, well, I think you're getting divorced at a perfect age. You're 24. And oh my God, even better, you don't have kids. And that was like the hugest, the hugest thing was just like, oh, hey, like, it's great. You don't have kids and you're young. So you still have like the whole life ahead of you. And so then I was like, that got to me to think like, okay, well, is it in the Hispanic culture that is marriage the important thing, or is it more the family, right? Because I think for sure if we had kids, I probably would have had the pressure of like, stick with it. So that like made me question. I think that's like a huge question that I have now of like, okay, well, up until what point do I stay in a marriage? Because I think it seems acceptable to leave when you don't have kids, but it's unacceptable to do that when you do have kids, which I understand, right? Because at the end of the day, like, the kids do get affected, but then it's like, at what point, like, do we like not give up? And is it like, it will, in the end of the day, it's like, who is it? Like, what damage is okay for me to go through myself to not leave a marriage? Which is
No, we talked a little bit. There's a couple things that you just said that like are bringing up some stuff for me. I mean, I grew up in a blended family, and my parents were married, and then they divorced, and then I was actually the product of two divorced people. And so I have a very non-traditional family, very non-traditional like upbringing in the sense of like that marriage structure, but family was always important. And so even with, for example, like my dad was married and then he was divorced, or actually annulled because they couldn't have kids at first. And then, whoopsie, then there was me, who was put on this earth for a reason. And, even with my dad and my stepmom, like they were together for almost a decade before they got married. So it wasn't even so much the like marriage aspect of it as much as it was the family structure. Because I did grow up, people have questioned this before, like, oh, did you grow up spoiled? Did you grow up traditional? And I'm like, no, I grew up privileged. I do not take that for granted. Like, I had everything I needed. I never wanted for anything. Went to a good school, grew up in a good neighborhood, got to go to college, like all of these things. But I definitely did not grow up in a quote unquote traditional, nuclear family, but there were a lot of traditional values. And I think like to a certain extent, I would joke that like that's where my like vanilla side comes from. And then it's also where my chocolatey swirl side comes from because of, which we'll get into more in this episode, but into that identity of like, I don't fit in a box. I don't belong in one place. But I know, we talked about this, like my upbringing was probably a little more diluted in terms of those values because of the fact that like in this scenario, like my parents are you. So like in terms of generations and who was born abroad, like my grandmother was born here, but my grandfather was born on my dad's side in Mexico. Okay. And then on my mom's side, they were all born in U.S. So actually exactly like you, but that was where my parents were. So my mom had, her free identity and to do whatever she wanted. And my dad still stayed very grounded. And it'll be interesting to see, how your brothers, like as they continue to evolve, like what traditional values they picked up and like their sense of family. But it's interesting when you're just talking about, your divorce, because I feel like, again, in a traditional like Catholic, Hispanic household, that would have been like, no, don't do it. Versus like now you've got this kind of blended, somewhat Americanized family, but yet the stigmas were still present on your mind of like, oh my God, I'm doing something so bad. I can't, like my family's going to judge me. And And then it just kind of sounds like you are who made up most of those stories. And
100%, which is crazy, right? Because then it's like, how it made me become aware of like, I am just living my life based on what I think other people are going to say about me, or i.e. my parents. Yet I have no idea how they're actually going to react. So it's all based off of an assumption that I think they're actually going to react this way, so I shouldn't do this. So it's like, okay, I need to start just living my life based off like what feels right for me, like my own truth and things like that.
And it's so crazy though that like you did have the fortune or misfortune, however you look at it. I mean, I'm going to say it's fortune of having that experience really young and growing and learning. Like a lot of that identity conversation came up in your mid-20s.
Yeah.
And you were able to like start to really navigate that at a point where like most people had no idea what they were doing, like dating recklessly. And here you are like, I'm a divorcee and I've already lived abroad with my husband. Yeah.
I mean, I look back at my 20s. I'm like, wow. People are like, and sometimes I tell people my story and be like, and how old are you? I'm like, oh, I'm 25. They're like, oh my God, you've done so much at that age. I'm like, fuck, I guess I really have. Like, that's kind of cool. Or not cool. It is. It is really amazing. And I look back at that time of just like that whole phase of my life. And it's so beautiful. And it's definitely shaped who I am. And it's like, just helped me grow. And at the end of the day, it didn't work out. But my God, I'm so grateful for my ex-husband. Yeah. Because I am where I am because of the choices that we decided to do.
And I think that actually, like, I say this with no offense whatsoever, but like when I met you, I actually thought you were older just because of like the life maturity and like just who you are as a person. I was like, wow, she's so empowered and like she knows who she is and she knows what she wants. And again, I love that you're hopeless romantic. Yay, we fight for that here. Like everybody, love. It's beautiful. But, like just kind of looking now at like how that journey, like how do you feel that journey has really helped you in embracing this empowered identity, both in how you are in life and in your finances, but also like in your sexuality and who you be as a person?
I have learned how happy I become when I am me. And so in this journey, like during the divorce, I would say like that was such a healing journey for me. And in that healing journey, I discovered who I am in every aspect. And I can't, you know what, it's a continuous journey. So I'm still even now discovering who I am. So yeah, financially, I was just like maybe a little bit traumatized in that sense of like, oh, well, I can't ever rely on a man, blah, blah. Now I need to go make my own money. And it was beautiful in the sense of like, yes, I was able to become financially independent and whatnot. But now I'm like, okay, step back. I do need a man, and I do want a man.
Well, you get to have one.
And so, and when I say back to a need, that's me dropping into my femininity. Like, do I know I can survive without one? But I want to. I want that. So, so in that sense, there was like me evolving there and being able to become this like, financially independent woman. And so now I'm learning to be able to trust. I'm like, okay, now I get to trust a man to be able to do that for me. And then when it came to my sexuality, I think like that was one of the most profound, like, whoa, this is like who I am as a person. And this is where I really valued that I was a woman. I was like, holy shit, we are powerful women. Because I really believe that our genitals are our creators. Like we can create. So all of our life energy comes from our sexual energy. And that's just like the belief that I have for myself. And so in discovering who I am as a person, what I like was very empowering. So when it came to like things that I, being intimate with myself, whether that was mentally like journaling or physically like getting to know my body, of like, oh, self-pleasuring, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And not being ashamed of it, right? Because also growing up Catholic, it's like, no, it's not okay that I like sex. No, it's not okay that I discover who I am as a person. But in this like discovery of self-pleasure, yes, it was, I'm discovering what I liked physically, but I was also discovering who I was as a woman. Mm-hmm. So it was like, whoa, I get to use my sex life force, not be ashamed of it. Because if I'm ashamed of that, then it's like I'm ashamed of who I am. So it was embracing just like, yeah, this whole concept of falling in love with myself, just who I am as a person, physically, sexually, in all ways. So when I started really falling in love with myself, sexually is like when I started really falling in love with everything about me and going on that like beautiful journey of like, I get to like know myself by discovering who I am. So.
Yeah. So the question that comes up here though is obviously like getting married so young and to a beautiful man, beautiful Frenchman. We know
we're giving him too much hype. No, just kidding. No, he is handsome. He knows it too.
Just because things don't work out doesn't take away from the fact that he's a beautiful man.
It doesn't. That was probably
part of the appeal in the first place. But do you feel like a lot of that self-discovery came, during marriage? And then how has that shifted even post-divorce?
I was so young when I got married. I didn't know myself at all. So in the marriage of me I think about like my sex with my ex-husband, and it's a reflection of who I was as a girl then, not even as a woman, but as a girl. And I can't say I was confident. I can't say I was like, I gave in the sex with my marriage, it was like I gave as much as I could because that's all I knew. Yeah. Like all I knew about myself is all I could give. So like when you say like, oh, I'm giving myself to you, well, I gave him a part of me that was just like who I was then. And now when I'm in love and I give myself to someone else, it's so much more because I just know myself so much more. And I'm just like so much more in love with myself that it's like, boom, this is what I'm giving you. Like I am a whole ass woman. I am a whole ass goddess. And I'm giving that to you. And maybe whereas when I would give myself to my husband, or ex-husband, it would just be more like, this is me, this is what I think love is, and this is what I'm giving you. Not to say that it was wrong or like that was still beautiful, but it was just at a whole different level. And I also viewed sex so much more differently. Like there's an exchange of energies when we're having sex with anyone. And so just the sacredness of sex in itself as well is just like something that I didn't have any idea about that when I was married, whereas now I just like see the power in it and the sacredness of it. So.
Well, it's a decade later. I mean, you've had
you've
had a lot of life happen in that time.
Yes, I have.
Well, kind of piggybacking off of that enthusiasm, how do you feel like that kind of open sexuality and the willingness to even have that conversation with yourself, let alone with other people, how do you feel like that has been influenced by like traditional values or just kind of your ideologies up until that point that you have had this freedom?
Yeah, I mean, I had to accept that sex wasn't wrong, right? Because in Catholic Church, it's just like it's viewed upon as something that's only supposed to be done to like have kids, which there's some beauty and sacredness behind that. So I'm not saying like that's completely wrong, but I just really had to be okay with that, the fact that I love talking about sex and that I think that it's like this force that creates who I am, and just be okay with talking about it and viewing about like just be okay with my thoughts of sex. And it was okay that it went against this like traditional thing, and like I can't say like I have open discussions with my parents about sex. Like I don't think that's something that they want to hear from me, but I've become a lot more open about it just in general with who I interact with like every day. Or even more recently, I went to a bachelorette party that I had my aunts there. And so we were talking about like sex and things that, they might be experiencing with their husbands or that I enjoy. And so it was really quite like, they were just sitting there and listening to me, and they're much old, not much older, but they're older than I am. And whereas 5 years ago, I would not have been able to have a very comfortable conversations with my aunts about sex. And I think what came out about it, it's like, you know what, this is who I am. Whether my aunts judge me about it,
right?
That's their problem. But I'm just going to stand here, own my truth, and be okay with it. And I think when you really just own who you are, it doesn't matter who you're talking to.
Yeah.
They'll listen and they'll catch what lands for them. And I think they'll end up admiring you even so, because it's like, wow, this is my niece talking about, her sex or what her thoughts are on sex and the truth behind, like, that's just her truth. And you just, I think that was very empowering for me, because it's like, okay, I don't care. I'm going to say what my truth is. And they embraced it. Right. And they didn't judge me, or maybe they did, but I didn't see it. And if they did, I didn't really care. Right. And then maybe my next step in growth is like, I get to really embrace that when I do have a conversation with, or I get to have a conversation with my parents around whatever sex may come. It's like, that's in my new growth is in being able to own that truth, and just have those conversations with them. But it wasn't until like maybe 5 years ago that I really could talk about sex with family.
Well, it's so funny because I actually remember on an earlier episode talking about with another young lady. I think her mom was Catholic and that was the predominant religion in her life. But I told her, I was like, it's so crazy because my mom versus my stepmom, they're so extreme. Like my stepmom was very much like keep the buttons tight and like lock it up and don't. And then my mom was like just a wild one, and I love her. And a lot of my sexual expression and sexual freedom came from fostering a relationship with her in my like early 20s. Like she really was just like, live your life, do what you want. Like it's your body, go have fun. And the way I had grown up with my stepmom and my dad was very much like, no. And not even no in like, don't do it, it's bad, but just no. Yeah. Like, there was no conversation. There was no like communication. And so even now when my dad says stuff, I mean, I'm in my late 30s, and when my dad says stuff that's like somewhat sexual or kind of funny, like he'll like almost catch himself like, well, if you, we talked about this during the pre-interview, but he had made a comment yesterday about beating up someone's butt, and he meant it in a very different way. Like, I don't want to beat up his butt. He was more like, I don't want to like ride him or tell him what to do. Right. And then he looks at me and he's like, I don't think you want anyone up your butt. So, and then he just kind of giggled when he like heard what he had just said out loud, and he's like, no judgment. If you want what you want to do with your body is your choice.
And maybe it starts off like that with little small, like, it doesn't have to be this intense conversation. It's like little comments like, oh my God, we can laugh about this like joke that ends up turning out to be sexual, like ha ha ha.
Everybody's having sex. Everybody,
exactly.
If they're not having sex, they want to have sex, or they like.
I mean, it's life.
It's life. It literally is life.
I think if you're like, if there's no, maybe this is like an extreme thing to say, or maybe it's not, but if like there's no sex in your life, like, no, I'm not saying you have to have it with somebody else, but like at least sex with yourself, like it's lifeless. You're probably living a lifeless life.
Yeah. Now, I've met a couple of people, and because I'm so open, and we talked about this also, like, because I'm so open, because I'm so curious, and I always like hold space for people to be on their own journey. And I know we've had that in common, where we can joke and kind of be, like you said, it depends on the group. Like sometimes I'm the wildest one in the group, and then sometimes I'm like super vanilla. But I always hold space for wherever I fall. And like, if the conversation is that, you like this or you don't like this, I'm like, great. But when I hear that women, especially like Hispanic women that I know, have never had an orgasm, or like don't like to have sex with their husband, like I know someone, she's been married a long time, and when she shared that with me, that like sex is just like obligatory and she doesn't enjoy it, and then she feels bad about that. And I, wanted like, I don't know what that looks like, but just invite her into the space of like what you're describing is like, learn yourself. Yeah. Learn your body. Learn where you need to be. I did have an earlier episode with a woman who said, she's married and this made her very emotional. She's like, I just want my husband to like romance me and like love me and make me feel like I'm special. And but it's just interesting. Like, I mean, she has healthy self-expression, but like the fact that like when you do have a partner, you want it. I think a big part of that, you know, she said, like, I'm not always just ready to go. And I raised my hand during the interview, and I was like, well, I am. But I think it's such a fortunate, like, place that I'm in, that I have done that self-exploration to know, like, not that I'm ready to go. I'm like, I'm not ready in this moment, but like when the situation comes, or there's a circumstance that like it's time to go, I don't necessarily like rely on the other person to have me in the mind, body, spirit space to want to do it. Like, I'm calling the shots. That's how I see it. Whereas like she's not, and even again, the person that I said that has never had the orgasm, like, there's not that self-awareness to really know certain times of my cycle in the month, like, I'm ready to go. My skin is sparkling. My hair looks great. And other times during the month, I'm going to tell the person that I'm sleeping with, like, you know what? I'm in my luteal phase. I'm extremely emotional. My boobs are very tender. Do not touch my nipples. Like, I'm good. We're not having sex right now.
Yeah.
Give me like 8 days and then we'll be good to go.
Yeah. No, it really, a lot of, I think us as women, we have to own our sexuality, or like own, if we want to experience orgasms or want to experience this, like we need to, like, that's our responsibility, for ourselves. And that just reminded me right now, actually, I didn't experience my first orgasm until I met my ex-husband, and this is so funny. I had completely forgotten about this. He was like, I told him, like, oh, I've never had an orgasm. He's like, oh, you need to like have one.
I love that. You need to have one.
And so he actually held the space for me, and it wasn't like we weren't like, our relationship was like long distance, so it's not even him who,
he wasn't in the room with you.
No, but he was like, you need to like take some time, and you just need to like pleasure yourself and see what you like and and in doing so, he like held that space for me. And it's like, that's okay, but like, I'm not getting off the phone until
you're done. Until you
have
there.
an orgasm, and like, you just touch yourself and whatever feels good, like stick. And so like, that was point number one of like, okay, whoa, yes, it is like, yes, I want a man to be able to give me an orgasm, but how can he give me one if I can't even give myself one? So like, it's really important in your self-discovery of like what I like and what feels good for me. And it's like, I can't just rely on the guy to do it for me. Like, this is where I get to take ownership of what I like and the pleasures that I like. It's like, okay, cool. Like,
well, and especially like, again, what we're saying, like coming up against tradition and religion and family values. Of course, like, I'm not having.
Trust me, like there's still times nowadays that I'm like self-pleasuring, and I'm like, I'm committing a sin.
Oh, no.
You know, but those are just like, okay, like that's old talk. Like, come on, but it sticks.
Well, and
it sticks.
That's what's so crazy.
Sticks.
It does stick, and there are people, there are friends, and again, because I'm that safe space, people tell me and they share, and it's just it blows my mind, and it kind of hurts me a little because I just think of the stagnant energy that exists in who they're being as a woman, in their being, in their flow, because it's not just, yes, I get that like religion and values and family and sexuality are in this really dynamic struggle, but it's up to you. Yeah. It's up to you as the individual, even if you have all these values, like, to still find the space. Like, I'm not advocating, and I mean, if that's where you are and that's on your journey and maybe you're celibate, maybe, you're not with a partner, whatever the case may be, it's still finding that space within yourself to, like, own your body.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, and that's not to say that, like, in my own sexual journey, like, I have met men, that healthy masculine chi that does invite and create space for me to even go further. Yeah. But if I didn't know how to have an orgasm in the first place, like, how would I be open to kind of getting to that next level? And it does, I mean, from a physiological standpoint, it's intense. I know there's like all these reactions, and I was telling somebody this recently, that anatomy down there is not exactly constructed for you to feel like super safe, because, you know, everything tenses up, and, you know, then there's what comes out the back and what comes out the front, and your body, you know, even in that release, like there could be that lack of trust of like, am I orgasming? I have to pee. I'm going to poop myself, whatever it is. But if you don't even have that exploration with yourself, you don't know when that feeling does come up. Like, I'm sure the people that haven't had orgasms have gotten right there to that line, and they don't know that, like, what did we say? What did you say it's called? The French word when you orgasm?
Oh, le petit mort.
Le petit mort.
I think.
Yeah. Which is basically like a tiny death and rebirth.
And rebirth.
So if a woman who has never experienced that in her self-exploration, or even with a partner, she doesn't realize like what's available on the other end of it, on the other side of it.
I think too, it's like there's this beauty in being intimate with oneself. And if you don't know how to be intimate with oneself, how can we expect ourselves to be intimate with someone else?
Yeah.
So it's like, there's this importance in discovering who we are. So, don't be ashamed.
Don't be ashamed.
And like you said, I love that you always hold space and there's no judgment in any, like, I have no judgment wherever anybody is in their sexual journey. It's a journey.
It's a journey.
And everyone gets to love what they love. And, like, I don't expect somebody to be wild like me or anything like that. It's like
wild, quotation marks, wild.
or just, I think for me it's always just like, just love yourself, know yourself, and you're perfect the way you are. So if you love to just have missionary style and that's your choice, beautiful. If you're all over the place in sex dungeons and all this stuff, it's like awesome, beautiful. Like,
I don't know why when you said all over the place, I was like on the kitchen counter.
Like everywhere, okay? Kitchen counter.
On the back of the couch.
You know, anywhere and everywhere.
But no, I love that. It's the invitation into wherever you are is where you are. Mm-hmm. And that's beautiful. Yeah. So I know, just to kind of circle back on family, and obviously, like, you've been married, you've been divorced. Do you want to get married again?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
That's always something that I think, if there's anything that I've known in life, is that I've always wanted to have a family, and be like a wife and be a mom.
I love that. I know during the pre-interview we talked about your parents and how they've been married for over 30 years.
Yeah, yay, go them.
So how do you think their relationship, and I also know your aunt has, she mentioned this, like that she'd been married for a long time.
Yeah, and I know they've been married. Yeah, they've also got married. I think they got married around the same time as my parents, so it has to be over 30 years. 30
plus years, two important people in your life, women especially, that... How do you think that's influenced your view on marriage and sexuality, really?
Well, I love and admire that they're still in this relationship or in their marriage. It's beautiful. But I think it's also taught me, or has me reflect on, okay, how do I not lose myself in a marriage or in motherhood? So this has been more recently because, you know, I'm young, but I'm not that young. So I do want to, you know, get married soon, but I need to find who I am as a person. Like it goes back to this like journey of like self, like who am I, and the importance of not losing myself. Like, but also discovering, like, who am I, and like, what do I want to create? What do I bring to this world? What are my gifts? And so really being grounded on that so that I can then bring that into my marriage and into motherhood. Because I just innately believe that if I know where I'm grounded or who I am, and I'm grounded in who I am, that will only make my marriage stronger and me as a mother, a better mother. I just, sometimes I wonder if I see my aunts and maybe my mom, and I wonder, okay, but do they know who they are, or did they? This is like I think I'm like the luckiest person. I have like the best mom, because she's so selfless. But then I'm like, did you lose yourself in your marriage? And I think like that's so huge for me. Is like and maybe she didn't, and maybe this is a story that I'm just telling myself this. Of course, like maybe she, that's something that I've questioned and that I've just sort of noticed in the relation. Like a lot of my aunts are actually still married and they've been in like long marriages, but like just the question is like, okay, wait, but did you lose yourself in being a wife? Did you lose yourself in being a mom? And so it's like, that's like a huge thing. It's like, no, I get to know who I am, and I do not get to lose myself in being in a marriage or being motherhood.
I think we get to invite your mom in. next season, I will have Melissa and her mom, and she will give us
that'll probably be tears,
some wisdom.
Like, oh my God.
I mean, but again, like having that conversation.
But
and I didn't honestly though. Like I think when you get to your 30s, there's kind of this, at least for me, this dynamic shift in the conversations and even the relationship that I have with my mom. And I mean, you're 31, so you're definitely on the young end of 30s. But I mean, I've had some really intense and like deep conversations with my mom, literally sitting at her dining room table where I ask her things. And I love probably one of my favorite things. Like she shared a story with me and then paused and said, wow, I've never told anybody that. And it created like this depth and this connection in like, especially for the older generation. I don't know how old your mom is, but my mom is in her 60s and she never really had anyone. She never had, like even you and I having this conversation right now, like with a friend, it just happens to be that we have lights and cameras and microphones, but we're just chatting, and she didn't have that. I know we had talked about this early on during our pre-interview, how our parents and even us a little bit, we didn't have friends outside of the family. Yeah. We just had family. That was it. Cousins, sisters. That was who you grew up with. That was who became your friends. And I know for me to have friends outside of the family, I'm kind of forging the path because. And then maybe even a couple cousins, but like there are other family members that I have that they don't interact with other people outside of the family. Yeah. Like maybe they have a couple coworkers, but they're not at the depth and the level of connection and communication. They're really only friends with their sisters and their cousins, and that's how my mom was. So with that though, if you all have this inherited mindset, and not, again, good or bad, but like just kind of the ideologies and the values, there is not even, you don't encounter something different. You're all kind of flowing the same way.
Flowing the same way. Therefore, like you said, the ideologies are the same. And it's like you don't get an outside perspective because you're kind of all in the same frequency. And so, I mean, I'm so blessed because I've been able to have both. Like some of my best friends are my cousins, and then I also have my best friends outside of my like blood family. So and I've learned I learned so much from both. Yeah, I love them both. Like,
no, I know you had said, I think we're pretty close in the numbers, that you have friends that you've been friends with for 20 plus years. Yeah. And I actually was talking to somebody about this. One of my really good friends. Well, a couple of friends. I've been very blessed to kind of have these different girlfriends throughout different eras. But, high school friends, now that's like 20 plus years. College friends, even still 20 plus years. Of one friend, I think we were joking, our friendship will turn 20 next year. She's a college friend. Nice. And, like I look back, even I was looking for photos and I was on my Facebook. And I hadn't been on Facebook in forever. And I was looking for photos. And I realized how it was such a good balance of, even in my photos, of friends and family. And this one friend, like, she was in a ton of pictures. Like, for a good, like, 15, 16 years, like, we were family. We were, but because of the fact that she had a different upbringing, and because of the fact that she, you know, came from different culture, her values and her ideologies were different. At the end of the day, like, we're all humans and we're all people, but when we venture into that space outside of our families and we have more friends and we learn about diverse cultures and different experiences, I think that's when that permission is really extended. Like, I don't have to fit in a box. I don't have to. I mean, and I'll ask you this question in a second, but there were challenges that I came up against even within my own family where I felt so different. And so even in, you know, this quest, this journey that you're on, do you feel like even with your parents' relationship and your aunt and uncle, like, do you feel like there's a challenge to always relate to, like, who they are and where they've been?
I can't say relate is the right word. Understanding. I just get to like, everyone's their own person, and I get to understand wherever they're at and understand that they grew up with some certain values, some certain ideologies, just like I did. So who they are is who they are, and I just get to, like, be accepting of that. And I can't take it personally, and like, there are things that I love about, you know, my family, and I'm like, oh, like, I relate to that truth, and so yeah, we'll ride that same wavelength, or we're on that. But then there's other things where it's like, that's just where I'm different, and so I'm gonna choose my own path and choose my own journey when it comes to that, and you're probably not gonna agree with it, or you're not aligned with it, and that's okay. But this is who I am, and it is what it is. So yeah.
But I think it's really important that you have done the work and you've been willing to, like, get true with yourself, because I know, especially, and we'll jump into this a little bit more in a second, but, like, especially for young women, there's gonna be this constant battle, struggle to really learn what voice is my voice, what truth is my truth. Where do I, like, get to stand in, like, this beautiful melding and this delicate dance of the values I inherited and the pathway that I get to create?
Yeah, and I feel even more for girls now, because you have, like, TikTok and all, not that, you know, TikTok's all bad, or Instagram, but you just have social media that's just, like, totally influencing young girls and, like, what their, like, expectation of beauty and who they think they should be. But it's getting, for me, it's been getting in touch with my intuition, and there's just a feeling of, like, this feels right, or not even right, but it just feels good in my body. And when I go against something, it's just, and trust me, I've gone in that, like, no, I think this, like, no, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep doing it, and this, but, man, your intuition knows, and it'll, like, the universe will always then stray you back to where you're meant to be. But yeah, I think right now my biggest thing is really getting in touch with my intuition, and because my intuition guides me, and it's going to lead me to who I am. So that's a hard journey, man. Like, really getting to know, like, okay, this is my truth and things, but it's beautiful. I think, like, yeah, I'm such an advocate on authenticity. Yeah. Just be true to yourself, man.
I love that. Just be true to yourself. So how do you handle moments of self-doubt and criticism? Because you are here foraging your own path, and not that you're different from your family, but you are a little bit of a pioneer.
I just fight for what is true to my being, right? Because I've lived a life where I wasn't myself, and what did that create? Sadness, depression. And so it's like reminding myself of, like, it's going to be hard, but, like, when you stand in your truth, the universe will bring the people that are meant to be in your life in there, and it will, like, it if it's not, then those people weren't meant to be in your life. And so, yeah, criticism will come. But, like, at the end of the day, it's like God, the universe, the people that are meant to be in my life will stay in my life. And I just get to trust that. And a big thing is trust. Like, trust and surrender to, like, the universe or God or whomever, you know, you may believe in. I always interchange both the universe and God. But just stay strong and just stick with just be true to yourself. And you'll see that, like, everything will start flourishing and there will be the flow, and it'll just stay strong. And when you're in your truth, trust me, like, people can see that, and maybe you're not even noticing it, but your energy, your vibe will, like, they'll start going towards you. Like, you'll steer them, like, steer the ship, like, you're steering your own ship. You are able to, like, steer others. I feel like you're really in your truth. So it could be hard, but man, stay committed to your truth, and shit will happen for you.
Oh, I love that. I mean, obviously here I'm a big advocate of people living their truth and finding whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. And obviously, like, a big part of me having this calling and being here to create this platform is so that women understand that they do have the space to own their voice and own their truth. And, you know, self-doubt, okay, great. We talked about this earlier. Like, if you're afraid, like, it's not there to, like, tell you, oh my God, stop, don't do it. It's there to tell you, like, what you're doing matters. Yeah. And even when it's laced with fear, keep pushing. Yeah. Really, really keep pushing. So how do you plan to use your voice and inspire others that are dealing with this, that are in a similar situation where they're learning to meld family values and their own empowerment?
So this has been something that's been in the back of my head for a really long time that I just haven't started creating. But yeah, there is something that I would create kind of sort of a space. I don't know what it'll look like yet, but it's in the works, and it'll just be creating the space, whether it's coaching or creating workshops, or just holding space for women and me just sort of coaching them through whatever they're going through. And that it is, like, whether it's like, it's going to involve being like, okay, finding your truth, and how do I get to web it together with all the other spheres in my life. Like, okay, in being in my truth, this is going to impact the financial part of me, the spiritual side of me, my relationships and things like that. So learning how to blend those all together, creating that space and coaching those women through that.
I'm excited. Stay tuned for those details. We'll be posting and sharing when she's ready to launch. And for those of you, especially young Hispanic women that are in that struggle, and then you're navigating your own space right now, she will be a lovely guide for teaching you how to meld your American and Mexican, Hispanic, all of it. I mean, wherever. I mean,
and even past the Hispanic thing, it's just it's being really a woman. In this freaking world.
I love it. I love it. No, like, so what do you have any final messages you'd like to share with the listeners about the importance of challenging the stereotypes and really forging your own path?
Yeah, I mean, don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. And your journey of finding who you are, like, trust me, my truth 10 years ago is not what my truth is today, but that's part of the journey. So don't give up on yourself, and just know that you are a gift. Like, you are the gift to this world, and being in your authentic self is the gift. So don't give up on yourself. Don't be ashamed of yourself. Embrace you, girl, because trust me, you're beautiful. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on this episode. And for those of you, Melissa doesn't actually know about this section, well, unless she's listened to the podcast up until now. We have a section called Women Demystified, where we have a couple of questions. So stay tuned for our next section on the Nipple Chronicles. So welcome back to our special section called Women Demystified, where men actually have the opportunity to ask questions to our lovely guests that they, maybe not have not had the opportunity to ask, or society has told them, their family has told them, don't ask those questions. So today, somewhat like a game, so thank you for playing, Melissa. We'll ask Melissa a couple questions. Let's see. So the first question is, does physical appearance really impact your choice when picking a partner, whether it's for fun or for long term?
Yeah.
No hesitation, ladies and gentlemen. Physical. Okay, so tell me more specifically. Like, it does impact, but what do you feel like is?
I say yeah, and honestly, like, I've dated guys that I did not find attractive at all, and then like their personality was just like amazing and it was cool, but I want to be able to like show off my man and be proud of my man. And so if I find him attractive, cool. Maybe other people won't find them attractive, but I'll also be like, dude, I got the hottest man on this planet. So, and then too, right? Like when it comes to like sex too, it's like there's like, for me, yes, emotion is first. Obviously, when I'm having sex with someone, it's like what I feel for you. But there's also like, I want to, like,
I want to want you.
I want to want you as well. So yeah, that matters to me.
I don't know why when I just said I want you to want me, I thought of the song I Want to Want You was the like song from 10 Things.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah, and she's like, I want you to want me. I want you.
Okay,
Exactly.
I don't need to be singing. Oh my God, cut that.
It's okay. It's okay. You didn't scare us. It sounded great. No, but it's funny because I feel like even in myself, like I've had this delicate struggle where for a long time, and I know I've said this on earlier episodes too. I love beautiful men. Like the more beautiful, the better. Like Actually, on the way here today, I forgot the memory cards for us to be able to film this episode. So to stop at Best Buy, and the gentleman who helped me at Best Buy was so scrumptious. Like, like probably 6 feet, 6'1", light skinned black guy. And then he smiled at me. Aww. And I always see the post on Instagram where they're like, I fell in love with the, and I'm like, oh my God, I had that moment today.
Okay.
So there's definitely, for me at least, like, I want that physical attraction. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it doesn't matter, like, as long as I'm attracted to you. There's not, like, and I say this to you men, so you're listening, like, I hope you're listening very clearly right now. Like, I don't need you to look like you fell out of a magazine. I don't need you to look like the quote unquote what a man's supposed to look like, hot guy. Like, I just need to like find some attraction to you. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because even this in the last couple of in January, I started to be attracted to someone who looks nothing like anyone I would ever even imagine that I would be attracted to. And what it was, because I actually, we just weren't good. He was not a good contender for us to date. Mm-hmm. But I had this sense of like peace with him. And in just being connected on that level, it made him that much more attractive.
You were attracted to his being.
I was, oh my God. If you know who you are and you're listening, like, know that like, even, I'm attracted to your being, even in us not dating, I still love your being. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge in that sense of like that being. And that's why it's like, yes, physical attraction does matter, but maybe in that specific of like, I have to find you attractive. Like, it doesn't mean that you're like this hot guy, because trust me, you can ask my sister. You'll look at my dating history and she'll be like, what? But it's because it's their way of being that attracts me. And so it's like, you're like, I find you physically attractive because of who you are being.
Yeah. So energetically, men, like, know that, like, okay, there's certain things that we'll joke about, like, I want this and I want that. But also know, like, how you're showing up, who you're being, what kind of energy are you exerting, what kind of impact do you make in the world. Like, I know there's, like, a water commercial that I get on YouTube all the time for, like, this nonprofit that, like, you invest and you pay this monthly subscription and you get to like bring water all over the world. But the guy who's like the creator of the company, like, I don't think I would normally be attracted to him, but when I'm seeing him like have this positive impact on the world on this video, I'm like, oh my God, he's so beautiful. Yeah. Like I feel I can see his soul exuding out of him. So definitely, you know, make that, be magic and own, again, back to what we talked about on the beginning of the episode, is just be authentic.
Yep.
Let us know who you really are.
Yep.
So for question 2, the question is, do women really think about their wedding, and is it really that big of a deal?
Every girl is different, for sure. But me, I've always jumped like with my wedding. And actually, like my first marriage, we didn't have like a wedding. We just got married through the courts, and it was with actually my mom was there, and then just his parents were there, and a few people. So like I'd never really had that like dream wedding. But yeah, I know what I want my wedding to be like. It's gonna be like days. Because I got to celebrate love.
Days. I love that.
Days.
So I have a friend, and I know they do this in different parts of the world, but I have a friend who was telling me she went to an Indian wedding, and I think it was like 3 or 4 days, which I think is actually really cool. The most that, like, now that I'm just thinking about, like, being in the weddings that I've been in, it's like 2 days and then maybe like a couple events that lead up to it. Yeah. But I know like even in those kind of like an 8-day wedding or a 7-day wedding, you kind of do all the events at once.
Yeah.
So it's like a cocktail party and maybe like a bachelorette party and a rehearsal dinner and then the actual wedding and reception.
Yeah. I'm going to get married in Lake Como. I'm just putting it out there.
Oh, I love it. So she's not even going to have another, like, she's not going to have a wedding here in the U.S. I better start saving my money so I can.
Yeah, well, then I thought, like, okay, well, I know there are people that can't make it to there. So it's like, okay, I'll have a wedding in, like, Italy, and then in Lake Como, and then I'll have my wedding here in the U.S., and then I'll have my wedding in Mexico.
So it's not necessarily multiple days in the way that I described it. You're just going to have multiple weddings.
Well, I suppose maybe some of those weddings will be like, I would see like my Lake Como one is a little bit more intimate. Mm-hmm. And then maybe not have a U.S. one, have one in Mexico, and like that one would be the one that's like a few days.
Yeah.
So
it's so funny. There's a John Legend music video, and I think it's like when him and his wife got married, and they're in Lake Como, and I just thought of that, and I'm like, okay, well, we're just gonna like have to like have just everyone. Yeah. It really, I love it. And again, I love that we went so far off the question. But like, yes, women do think about this, because here we are like planning it out right now. Like we're planning her Italian wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think like, yes, it's a party and yes, it's a celebration. But for me, at least like knowing like how much I love and really like honoring that it is a celebration of love. Like, yeah. And just know that, like, I never thought about getting married until probably, like, 12, 13 months ago.
Oh.
Like,
love that for you.
Yeah. It wasn't even something that I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, and you're, like, out of the womb ready. Like,
yeah, of course. And then it was just like, unless I find some place, like, that's more beautiful than, like, Lake Como, I would choose something else. But that's just, like, I was like, yeah, I want to get married here. But then it also kind of sucks because now it's, like, so commercialized, and it's like all this like everyone's getting married in Lake Como, so it's like if I could find like a smaller like lake town that I find like as beautiful, then I totally would do it, because I hate the fact that it's like it's Lake Como, but then that's also by the fact that I love it, but it is just like one of my favorite places on this earth. So yeah, I'm gonna have my wedding there.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I would get married there, but I definitely would honeymoon in like along one of the Greek islands, like all through there.
Okay,
like,
yeah,
I definitely am.
Crate's beautiful.
A Mediterranean,
a
Mediterranean girl.
I love that.
I want the warmth, but the cool breeze.
Yeah,
and the white beaches and the white sand beaches.
Yeah.
So I definitely see myself there. I might have to go scout it out. We'll see. Maybe in the fall we'll plan a trip.
Santorini, but that's also kind of like so well known. But yeah. Well,
I mean, there's lots of them. So
yeah,
we'll
but
just find which ones are a little
I'm a
more...
traveler, so you can always invite me.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And let me say that again because I giggled at the beginning. This whole podcast, I'm going to have to cut out. Like, I'm going to leave a lot of the laughs, but there's a lot of laughs.
Okay, I don't know.
Well, thank you so much for playing along, Melissa, and answering these questions. And again, men, like, please, if you're listening on Spotify, submit your questions below. If not, follow us on Instagram at the Nipple Chronicles and DM us your questions. We're so excited to allow you to demystify women. We are here. We are inclusive. We love men. And we're just simply navigating on our end what it looks like to be a woman in the modern world. So again, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming in today, and we're so excited for the next episode. So stay tuned for episode 10. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Before we wrap up today's episode, a big shout out to our wonderful sponsors, the Village Workspaces. Whether you're an entrepreneur, freelance, or creative soul, the Village Workspaces are the perfect environment to foster creativity and productivity. With state-of-the-art facilities and a community that thrives on collaboration, it's more than just a workplace. It's a place where ideas grow and connections are made. Visit the Village Workspaces today to see why it's an ideal spot for anyone to push the boundaries of what's possible. And remember, when you mention the Nipple Chronicles, you'll receive a special offer on your first visit. Make your next big move at the Village Workspaces, where your potential meets opportunity.